Buenas tardes, welcome, bienvenidos. I don't want to be reiterative, but until we crack the nut, we will have to continue asking the same question over and over. How do we close the financing gap for water? One element, not the only one, is private sector investment, of course. And a couple of aspects, not the only ones, are agriculture and nature-based solutions. This is a high-level overview of our agenda for today, which will again include showcase studies and an interactive discussion. This session will be featured in English, translation services to Spanish only through the app Interactio using the code WWWWEEK2021. You can download the bios and other resources from the file option in the menu in your screens. We just wanted to share some key terminology, next please, to get us all on the same page of what you might hear the speakers refer to in the case studies. In the gray boxes are the cost of project intervention, which could include operating costs, maintenance costs, and any investment costs related to rehabilitated assets or new assets that are part of the project. In the green boxes, you can identify funding or repayable financing sources to cover the cost of the intervention. Funding sources can include direct revenues if the project so decides, things like water tariffs, visitor fees, or carbon or biodiversity credits that generate revenues, public grants or subsidies, or private donations from corporations or individuals. And referring to repayable financing can also be accessed to fill any gaps that are not covered in the various funding sources. And by repayable financing, we talk about loans, which can be concessionary or commercial, equity from shareholders if the solutions pursued is set up as a business, or bond proceeds for really large-scale investments. Next, please. We will be moving to case studies from 6 companies across 4 countries, the US, Mexico, Argentina, South Africa. The case studies cover a few nature-based solutions, which are increasing in interest, like invasive species removal and reforestation, and also highlight various agricultural interventions that have impacts on water quality. You will see how companies are being creative with their resources and are partnering with others like government, investors, and NGOs to make these projects happen. Next, please start thinking on your questions and add them to the chat so we can, when we move, we can have an interaction with you. And this is a list of our star speakers. And as you can see, they come from various parts and various companies. And please welcome Carolina from ABI is going to talk about their case in Zacatecas. Welcome, Carolina.
Hello, Hugo, and thanks to everyone. I'm very excited to be here during World Water Week, sharing this case study with all of you. And okay, great. So now we see the screen. Amazing. So as Hugo was saying, we're here to share best practices of how we are mobilizing public finance for water security. And we want to share with you this project that we really, really love at AB InBev and that we have done in Grupo Modelo, which is our company in Mexico, in partnership with the German Corporation for Sustainable Development, GIZ. So in 2 places in Mexico, Zacatecas and Napan, we have 2 of our largest breweries. And we're facing a challenge, which is water scarcity. Aquifers are being depleted. In the case of Zacatecas, we're having over 72 million cubic meters of deficit annually. And we want to tackle this problem. We want to dream big, but of course, tackling these type of problems are very difficult for one company to do it on its own. That's why we have partnered with many other stakeholders primarily with the GIZ, but also with other key stakeholders like TNC, FIRA, CIMIT, Harvard University, Toronto, COTAS, and VERCOR to address this issue. How are we going to do it? We have 5 different pillars. We're going to, on the first hand, try to replenish the aquifer and increase its recharge capacity with nature-based solutions, but that's not enough. We also need to reduce water use in its main source of use, which is agriculture. How are we doing this? We're doing this incentivizing farmers to convert their crops into conservation agriculture and also drip irrigation. However, one of their main problems, and I'll walk you through it in the next slide, is how to do it, because farmers cannot access credit in Mexico easily. So that's why we created an innovative financial inclusion mechanism so they can access this credit and change completely their crops to drip irrigation, getting, of course, water savings and many other co-benefits. And last but not least, in this project that I want to mention before we move to the financial inclusion mechanism, we are going to monitor, of course, the impact of this project and see how it's positively impacting the aquifers. And we're setting up a governance structure to ensure that this is owned by the community and also that it has long-term effects. If we go to the next slide, we will be able to see our financial mechanism. What are we doing? Basically, we know that more than 80% of farmers in Mexico don't get access to financial services, and we need to close the gap. How are we doing this? We are creating a coverage fund in partnership with FIRA, that is the Rural Development Trust Fund. And basically, we're creating collectively this fund and partnering with other credit companies to give all the farmers a credit that it has a better interest rate without paperwork and with an additional cherry on top of the pie. And it's that if they pay, if they complete their payment, we're giving them back a bonification. That means that it incentivizes the payment. Thanks to this mechanism that we've created in partnership with FIRA, we're going to manage to give access to all of these farmers, even if they don't have a credit history. And we're not only giving access to our barley farmers, we're giving access to credits to all of the farmers that are located in these aquifers, because we know that together, working in partnership with these communities and building this innovative financial mechanism, we're going to manage to save water and to drastically change the water scarcity situation that we are facing in both Zacatecas and Apan. We already began. We've given credits to over 20 farmers. We began this year, and we are allocating new credits for all the farmers that are interested in joining the program. Of course, once the farmer gets the credit, we help them install the drip irrigation system, and it comes with a commitment. Once the farmers are part of the Agua Firmes initiative, they voluntarily commit to save.
1 minute left, Carolina, sorry.
No, I'm ready to conclude. Hugo, I was just going to say that all the farmers commit to save the water, that the water that is saved is going to stay underground in the aquifer, so we can ensure that the aquifer is replenished for them, for us, and for future generations.
Thank you very much, Carolina. And now I invite Mike Conrad from Cargill to talk about their project in South Plains Grassland Program in the US.
Thanks for having us, everybody. My name is Mike Conrad. I'm a Senior Sustainability Manager for Cargill, and I'm based in Wichita, Kansas. So Cargill has global ambitions to achieve water management, sustainable water management, all of our priority watersheds and operations by 2030 using a context-based approach. We have a set of goals that are relevant for the places where we work. So what we do is, not everything that we do has a primary water focus, but we really try to design our programs, supply chain partnerships to maximize co-benefits. So a cool example of this is our Beef Up sustainability program. So at the heart of Beef Up is a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas reductions in our North American beef supply chain by 2030. How we'll get there is we really want to bring together our customers and NGO partners and government actors to come together and really scale up solutions that make sense for producers. And we're seeing that a lot of the programs that we've designed have a good carbon benefit and also have a really significant water benefit. So an example project of this is our 1 million acre sustainable grazing partnership with Cisco, one of our biggest customers, the USDA, and NIFWF. Why we're doing this, how we get the carbon and water benefits is in the southern Great Plains of the USA. It's a pretty water stressed, arid region, really susceptible to the effects of climate change. We know that if cattle are grazed in certain ways that kind of mimic the way the bison used to roam the plains, it can increase the capacity of the soil to sequester carbon, to reduce runoff, restore water. It's kind of like having a big sponge underground, and cattle can actually turn the grass to a healthier state and set that chain of motion into play. So we're using cattle as a mechanism to do a lot of cool things. So we're projecting the carbon benefit from this program is about 360,000 metric tons by 2030. And then the water benefit that we are seeing is just from water restoration in aquifers, it's about 81 billion liters of water that will be restored as a result of this. And to put that into perspective, that's about the amount that a city of 1 million people uses in a year, or a little more than the city of Stockholm would use in a year. And then how funding works on this. So this is the coolest part for us, and kind of core to our strategy is we want to bring our customers and NGO partners together, because together we have different places in the value chain where we can help things move more quickly. We can work at scale, and with the combined funding, we can go bigger. So the way this worked is Cisco is one of our most important business and sustainability partners. We had been engaging for a few years to see how we might go big on beef sustainability. Picked the Southern Great Plains as an area to work. We each brought $2.5 million to the table to put into this. Came to NIFWF, who has a really cool structure where they can take partner money and leverage it and match it. So they ballooned that 5 million combined budget that Cargill and Cisco put together into a $15 million project. So they have really good ways to match funds, leverage through government grants and things like that. So it's kind of a full force multiplier. The more we can bring in partners at the first stage, the bigger we can have that matching effect. So it's a really cool program. The way it'll work is Cargill, Cisco, USDA, and NIFWF will work together each year. That producer projects that make sense for them. Every year we'll select a set of projects, and then funds will be allocated to the ranchers, and NIFWF will go out, train the ranchers, work with them to develop a ranch specific plan that helps sequester carbon and has these water benefits. And so far we're seeing a lot of demand from ranchers. They really like this, and it's really important to us to put the producer first. And these are things that we see that producers really like. Helps with water, helps with carbon.
Please.
Yep, helps with water, helps with carbon, increases their productivity and frees up some time that they have too. So this is kind of our strategy, and especially with these beef sustainability and grazing projects, we're seeing really good water benefits as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Mike. And now on to Argentina with Muriel Jojo from Danone. Welcome, Muriel.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Muriel Joujou. I'm in charge of the water cycle and sustainability for Danone Global. So I'm not from Argentina. I'm really a French, as you can see or listen here with my accents. So as you know, that Danone has the same nature with one planet, one health. And sustainability is really the backbone of our global strategy. Water is really important for us because, as you know, most of our products are based on agriculture, but also because we have some water bottle business, and Villavicencio was on the brand that we have within Argentina. So we had a lot of examples, but I decided today to share with you this example on this Villavicencio, which is for us really an important brand and a specific situation in the Andea zone where we have a natural reserve. And this natural reserve has been certified by Ramsar, the UN Wetland Conservation Organization, as really a unique place for water preservations. What we have observed in the last years is really an increase of the invasive alien species trees that could have some direct impact on our own businesses by accelerating the depletion of the water resources and have negative impact on that, but also having negative impact on the wetland surface and also on the biodiversity. So this reserve is really the place where we are working for more than 20 years on preserving the resource, but also preserving the wetland and the biodiversity. So based on all this knowledge, we really try just to identify the issue and just to find some solution. Where we are within Danone is like we decided just as all of you, you have and you will present on the water stewardship approach, which is really on the context-based approach based on science and fact, and making a collective effort all together just to find some solution that will have direct impact on water, but also multi-benefit. So when we look at these invasive alien species, we have seen that it could be also an opportunity. Today, the community around are producing jam from these trees, but it's really local and familial small businesses. So we thought it could be really an opportunity working together with the local university to develop new products, the community that they could transform and sell these essential oil extracted from these alien trees, and to create and valorize this extraction and to create new products. So after identifying the problem, we really try just to see what will be the value for everybody walking around the reserve, in and around the reserves. So what we really wanted just to make sure that the solution we will find, we have really a positive impact on the water preservation by improving or preserving the biodiversity, obviously, surely, but also the soil condition and the wetland conditions. What we also wanted is we really wanted to empower the unprivileged local community around and try to develop with them, for them, some specific business opportunity, especially for the women, because we thought it really could be businesses that the women could really manage directly, and also helping them to find some off-taker. And we have identified few big companies that really try just to get this specific new essential oil for their own beauty and cosmetic products. So making the link with the private off-taker also could help to leverage and to define the business cases. The last point, which was very important for us to define the business case, was sure that this pilot we could do within these resources and reserve could be replicable. You all know that obviously making
Muriel,
the pilot—
1 minute,
yes,
please.
Yes, making the pilot, and it's really important and to have some idea and build the business cases. But what is really important is also just to have the opportunity to scale up, to have bankable projects. So we are working with local university, but also development bank on these projects, and we are on the phase for the call for fundraising to define the pilot, put in place the pilot. So we are on the early stage of the product. We'll be very happy next year to come back and present the results. But we find the off-taker, we have the business cases, and now we are just trying to initiate the pilot. So we know that more and more funding is flowing to the water stewardship and conservation projects from impact investor, and this is really great. What we really need now is just to have this co-financer helping us to piloting the study, put in place this one, and
last 15 seconds, please. Sorry.
Yes, and that to scale up. So that will be my message. We need a co-financing part. We need to involve all the players locally to make the business case strong and to have bankable solution and projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel. And I'm sure there are many things to say, and I'm sorry for the audience that surely want to hear more. And in this roller coaster going from Mexico, Argentina to the States, we come back to Mexico to hear from Carlos Hurtado from FEMSA Foundation on their experience in Guanajuato. Carlos, welcome.
Thank you, Hugo. My name is Carlos Hurtado. I'm from FEMSA Foundation. And today I'm going to talk to you about an agriculture project that we have in Guanajuato, covering 4 points. The first one is, why are we doing this? Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the context of where we are working in, that is Guanajuato. Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the first phase of the project, that is working on operational efficiency. And lastly, I'm going to talk to you about building the financial mechanism and capturing the value of water. On why are we doing this is because the challenges that we face on the water sector, specifically on agriculture, are huge, critical, and urgent. By 2050, feeding a planet of 9 billion would require an estimated 50% increase in agricultural production. Over 95% of the world farms are small size, that is 5 hectares or less, and around 70% of fresh water used globally is for agriculture. Water critical activities account for 25% of greenhouse emissions, but attract less than 6% of the climate finance. Of that 6%, only 4% is for agriculture. That is why, for us, creating enabling conditions to helping unlock direct institutional investments into sustainable agricultural projects to increase water efficiencies for small producers is critical for the future. So let me talk to you a little bit about Guanajuato. Guanajuato is a state in central Mexico with a privileged geographic position, with access to national and international markets. 84% of the water used in Guanajuato is for agriculture. For reference, similar states with similar agricultural output have a usage of 59 to 73%. Global efficiencies in Guanajuato for traditionally irrigated hectares is only of 40%. We estimate that 60 to 70% is achievable in the region. Because of this, Guanajuato has a deficit of 1 billion cubic meter of water annually. So what are we doing? In this first phase, we are working on operational efficiency, and we are launching a pilot with a scope of 2,000 hectares to improve performance and water efficiencies. We aim to reach water savings of 33% and increase annual profits for producers of $7,500. That is $1.5 million for the whole project. We are also aiming to capture atmospheric CO2 in the soil with improved agricultural practices. We are also strengthening the farmers by incorporating them into a local supply chain and also giving them better access to markets internationally and nationally. How are we doing this? We're identifying 150 small producers in the various supply chains of ABI and HEINEKEN. We are structuring them in small groups to help improve practices and make investments easier. Through these groups, we are building social structures and mechanisms to support and train and build trust. As a tool, we are creating an agriculture innovation hub within the Guanajuato Water Fund. It aims to create synergies between the small producers, provide technical assistance and dissemination of best practices, and test new technologies and techniques between the small farmers. On the second phase, that is the building of the financial mechanism, we are doing this on top of 2 components. The first one is the operational gains that we have from the increased income because of the extra yield and lower operational costs. The second one is the income generated by the cubic meters of water saved. To capture that income, we're identifying the value of water for different stakeholders and evaluating the feasibility of capturing that value. Then we're incorporating that into a financial structure. In parallel, we're working with possible investors to secure a first round of investment. And finally, we're working on a legal structure to hold the water rights and effectively take them out of circulation, thus helping with the deficit of the state. We hope that the Water Fund can play this role not only of training, but also of holding that water for environmental use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Very interesting. And then we move a little bit north of Guanajuato and go to Monterrey with Marco Mascarua from HEINEKEN. Marco, welcome.
Thank you, Hugo, and good afternoon to everybody. And today, this afternoon, just a brief clarification. I'm the former Vice President of Corporate Affairs. Now I'm in a new position since 15 very intensely in this project. So happy to participate and to be joining. So basically, what I want to talk today is 2 issues. The first one, our HEINEKEN Mexico strategy on water protection and how this particular initiative translates into one of our success cases, which is the San Juan watershed, which we did as part of our balancing strategy. So our strategy basically has 3 pillars. The first one has to do with mitigation, that is reduce the water we use to produce a liter of beer. And this has been a success story over the past years. In 8 years, we have been able to reduce 30% our water usage. The second pillar in our strategy has to do with access to water. And within the Mexico team, what we analyzed is we brew beer. We have the capabilities to deliver canned water. Why don't we launch an initiative to deliver canned water to communities that are in stress? So basically, we have been doing this on a regular basis since 2015. Each year, we produce cans of water. And when there's an unfortunate event, such as an earthquake or a hurricane, we try to address that disaster and help out delivering this canned water. And finally, balancing. And balancing, it's basically to try to become water neutral in those breweries that are located in water stress areas. We have been working since 2015 very closely with different partners, among them the Nature Conservancy, CONAFOR, Fondo Ambiental Metropolitano de Monterrey, Fundación FEMSA, and others to really try to tackle this issue. With this, I would like to go to the next slide, where we basically, this is what I want to talk about. It's a story of success, which is basically the San Juan River watershed story, which is an initiative where we decided to balance our brewery in Monterrey by doing a very, very strong effort on reforestation. We have been planting 1.7 million trees over the past years. We have been able to balance 1.6 million metric liters of water and more than 1,300 reforested hectares. The interesting part in this initiative, and this is some of the things that I want to point out, is what are the learnings. And the learnings, it's reforestation. It's pretty popular among initiatives that companies are doing, but what we found out is that reforestation is not enough. In the initial years of this initiative, we were doing reforestation, but our survival rate of those trees was around 20%. So our learning over the years was that it was not enough to do reforestation, that you have to do the maintenance and you have to do the groundwork to basically help out with those reforestation efforts. Towards the end of this initiative in 2019, 2020, our survival rate is around 70%, which is much more than the regular standard of success on any reforestation effort. The other big learning in this initiative is if you want to do reforestation, you better have the ability to go into the places where you're reforesting. So if you do not have the ability to go into those places and make interventions and do maintenance work, your reforestation is going to go nowhere. Our initial reforestation efforts in some places were done with communities that really wanted reforestation, but since we didn't have access.
Un minuto, Marco, por favor.
Yeah. Since we didn't have access to those places, the efforts were not that sufficient. And finally, having a nursery, a plant nursery on site, it's really relevant, because if you have to bring the trees from very far away, or you don't have enough local trees, then your efforts will not be as efficient. So this is a success story. Reforestation is not only about planting trees, it's about the maintenance, it's about restoring the ecosystem, it is about working with partners, among them Nature Conservancy, CONAFOR, and other partners. So happy to share this story and hope it helps. Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you, Marco. So efficiency, investment go hand in hand. Companies face similar challenges. They're context specific, but similar. So now we can jump to the other side of the Atlantic and go to South Africa with David Grant, who's going to talk about their experience with the Greater Cape Town Waterfront in South Africa. David, welcome.
Thank you very much. So as he was saying, I'm taking you out of the Americas and into Africa. Just for reference, I'm David Grant, the Director for Global Water Stewardship for PepsiCo. So I think if we can just go to the next slide. Right, so I just wanted to give you an example of how the private sector investments support water security, in this case specifically around Cape Town in South Africa and in relation to the Cape Town Water Fund. So, you know, water security is a major concern for the city of Cape Town, and this is probably best evidenced by the fact that between 2015 and 18, they had a really significant drought, which really approached the city into a day zero situation where effectively the taps run dry. Now, the city managed to avoid that, but the threat still remains. And there's a really big focus on reducing demand within the city and also alternative water supplies. Now, alternative water supplies are really important because the existing supplies are under significant pressure from both population growth and the impacts of climate change. And to give you a bit of an idea of that, they estimate that by 2028, they'll probably need additional 300 to 350 million litres per day. So not too far off. So then the next question goes in terms of where's this water going to come from? So there are grey infrastructure options like desalination, but a group of stakeholders got together with the Nature Conservancy to see what role nature-based solutions could play in terms of augmenting that city's water supply. And specifically focusing in on invasive species, which were covering around 2/3 of the catchments that were feeding the city of Cape Town. So a study was commissioned in 2016, 2017 to look at what opportunities there were. And essentially what they came back with was that the water yield of their catchment was being reduced by about 54 billion litres per year as a result of those invasive species. So a significant number. But what was also really important that came out of that study was looking at what the cost-benefit analysis was in terms of investing in removing those invasive species versus investing in other technologies. So really a return on investment. And what you can see in that bottom right graph, and unfortunately it's quite small, is that you can see that the top line, that's the nature-based solution, by far is the most cost-effective way to augment that city's water supply. By way of example, the little orange blocks are the cost per cubic meter, and the blue line is the amount of water that can be realized out of that project. So you can see the next closest is water reuse or desalination, but at a significantly higher cost. So just again, the nature-based solution was on average between 2/3 and 1/10 cheaper to do than any other solution. So we did the return on investment for the 25 catchments. It was done individually and narrowed it down to 7 key catchments, which would deliver the biggest result, and costed that out to a project which was around $25 million over a 30-year period, with the idea that at the end of the 30 years, on a like-for-like basis, we would be releasing an additional 100 billion litres back into that catchment per year. So a significant, really significant project. Project's divided into 2 phases. The first phase is over a 6-year period, so it's 2018 to 2023. It cost around 15 million, and that was really to do the initial clearing of the invasive vegetation. And then for the remaining period, which was the 24-year period, at about 10 million, which is really around the maintenance and management of that.
1 minute, David, please.
Perfect, thanks. And I guess let me just jump to the end. What you can see there is the funding we've managed to raise to date is around $12 million, which is very close to the 15 million that we're aiming for the first 6 years. And I think what's really helped this in terms of selling the business case to other corporates is, firstly, it was a natural crisis that was happening, so it was a slightly open door. A really solid business case, backed up by science and a very strong return on investment, and a strong measurement and evaluation program, so we can monitor the progress, which you can see in the bottom left there. And importantly, a really strong proven model through the Aqua Fund of the Nature Conservancy. So I'll end there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, David. Ideas, investment backed by business case, science analysis, return on investment, all great ideas that are going to spur certainly our discussion. And to facilitate that discussion, Maria Eduarda Gouveia from the Inter-American Development Bank is going to lead us to a very interesting discussion with our panelists. Maria Eduarda, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Hugo. We have now 15 minutes for questions for a roundtable. So I will start by the order of presentations. So Carolina from AB InBev, we have a question from the chat. So given the involvement of different stakeholders and partners, how much communication is important to achieve, and how can it be achieved effectively?
Well, communication is very important because here we're talking about behavioral change, right? We need all to be more efficient and to use water sustainably for the long term. This means that first we all need to understand the problem, the scale, the solutions, and we need to raise awareness. But also, since it is a complex problem that we cannot solve on our own, or a farmer cannot solve on its own, we need to work together as a team. We need to have governance. And in that regard, we need to communicate with each other. We need to understand what the other one is doing and how this positively impacts the situation. That's the only way, through communication and transparency, that we will manage to have a robust governance and to have effective results. So I would say that communication is key. It's a key pillar. We showed you the umbrella with the different pillars of the project of Aguas Firmes. Of course, communication is cross-cutting throughout the 5 pillars.
Thank you, Carolina, very much. Thank you for sharing your insights and this great presentation, this great case. So now let's switch to Michael Condrath from Cargill, who presented the case Southern Plains Grasslands Program, United States. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
So how much effort is required to design programs of this scale, and how do they contribute to resilient food systems?
Yeah, for the first part, it's a lot of effort, especially the big scale projects that everybody's presented today. For us, we try to make it easier on everybody by bringing together different actors in the supply chain. It just makes it easier when we combine funding. We need people who do have the funds to get the ball rolling on some of this stuff. We need people with boots on the ground to help with implementation. So that's where our NGO partners come in. We also need people who are really good at communicating, which a lot of our big customers are experts at that too. So try to get everybody together and maximize the different strengths that we have. And I think that enables us to move a little more quickly and to work at scale. But I mean, these are big projects, but really important impacts. So we can make it happen. The second part, how did they contribute to resilient food systems? I think we always try to put ourselves in the producer's shoes. None of this stuff is going to stick and continue if it doesn't make sense for producers. So whatever we do, we're trying to make sure that it is something that a producer wants to do. And further along, as we have more and more success, have producers talk to each other and help amplify those type of communications so they know they can adopt something independently and replicate and have it make sense for them.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you for mentioning communications again as part of the efforts, and also governance and engagement of different stakeholders. Thank you. Now, the next question goes to Muriel Joju from Danone, Alien Species Removal in Argentina. So hi, Muriel. So could you elaborate on the role of the education for sustainability?
Yeah, sure. So education is really essential of course, for making the transformation. We want to do it on water. 2 elements for me, which are really important, is like, we have been speaking about water stewardship, water preservation approach, all of us, and with all these elements of science-based, context-based, collective approach locally. So that's really important that we train the people locally that will do the projects, and that they could understand how the private and the public could work together to find collectively the solution, implementing NBS, valuing much more water, putting in place some multi-benefit solutions. And this why within Danone we have developed with WWF and RAMSAP some specific training on water stewardship, how to make private and public together. And this training is really an open source training that all the people from private, public communities, players, students, scientists could play on that. That's the first element. The second element on education is also on what we are speaking for a while, which is the bankability. What does it mean, bankability? We need to explain to the people that are doing the projects also what are the criteria for the investor, for the company, and just to understand better locally what does it mean, and that's really important, these parts, because for some people making a strong business case is not so easy. It seems very simple, but most of the time is more complicated than that, and making a bankable project is also very difficult. So combining the effort of all the people on the field and the investor and the development bank, making more transparent about what is a bankable project, that will help to encourage the investment and the co-financing of the projects.
Great, fantastic. It's bankability and communicating, educating people about that is definitely key. Thank you very much, Muriel. So now the next question goes to Carlos Hurtado from FEMSA, Financial Mechanism for Agua in Guanajuato, Mexico. So Carlos, what are the challenges of implementing the financial mechanism on the second phase of the project, of the pilot?
Thank you, Maria. I think the barriers that we see are in three main axes. The first one is the structural barriers. The second one is cultural barriers, and the last one is technical and operational barriers. On the structural barriers, we see two elements. The first one is the legal framework. Basically, the legal framework in Mexico do not foster innovation and efficiency. There's a subsidy structure that deters meaningful investments. There's also a political system that has built political power on top of the high dependence of communities on subsidy and philanthropical models. On the cultural barriers, we have an element of trust. Communities do not trust, are wary of outside promises and interventions because of historical poor performance. Social inertia is also something that has been, it's a barrier because of the traditional farming practices. Communities are reluctant to change, and it goes back to the behavioral change that some of my colleagues have mentioned. And the last is the technical and operational barriers. And it goes around monitoring and evaluation of the results, because monitoring is a key part of building the paper for performance structures that we are trying to build. Monitoring the results and the impacts is key, so we can structure the financial mechanisms on top of that.
Maria Eduarda, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. So thanks very much for your comprehensive answer and bringing new elements to the table, such as the legal framework to foster innovation, building trust in the community. Thank you very much. So now the next question goes to Marco Mascarua from HEINEKEN, reforestation in Mexico, in Monterrey, Mexico. So, Marco, what are the drivers for each solution to tackle water scarcity and climate change? Is it specific to the nature of water stress in a particular area?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, most of the drivers have to do with the water problem in the particular area. I would always like to say that water is a local problem. It's not necessarily a global problem. So you can have a brewery in a water stress area, and you can have a brewery in a place where there's no stress. That is why HEINEKEN's strategy was to basically address or initially the breweries that were on water stress areas. In our case, the driver is very clear. If you are operating and you have been, as Heineken Mexico has been operating for 130 years, and you want to continue for at least another 130 years, you have to ensure the sustainability of the area and the resources of where your operations are basically doing the day-to-day activities. So those are the main drivers. I mean, the location and the scarcity and the particularities of the area.
Thank you very much for bringing that up, the local problem as one of the issues. Thank you, Marco. So now let's move on to David Grant from PepsiCo, Greater Cape Town Water Fund in South Africa. So David, how does the Greater Cape Town Water Fund in South Africa support and align with existing government initiatives?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess with any good, robust partnership, before you start anything, you do extensive stakeholder engagement. And obviously, as part of this process, local government is key and part of that engagement to understand what their goals, ambitions are around water. And specifically to Cape Town, the City of Cape Town has an overall resilience strategy which they developed post the severe drought, which I mentioned during the presentation. And in that strategy, they got two key elements which really dovetail into this into the work that the Water Fund is doing. The first one is establishing sufficient and reliable water supply from different sources. So really focusing on alternative sources from what they've currently got. And the second one is an effort around eradication of invasive species, which is quite prevalent across Western Cape, or in fact across South Africa. It's a national government priority, not only a City of Cape Town government priority. So back in 2016, when the fund first kicked off, the Nature Conservancy and the City of Cape Town entered into a memorandum of understanding because the city understood the relevance of this work to their own strategy. And I think what's also quite interesting and which is, I guess, the proof in the pudding is that in 2021, the City of Cape Town started investing in the fund as well, which really kind of shows that they see the relevance of it to their own strategy and willing to put resources behind it. And as of next year, no, 2023, their funding will probably be over half of the total funding that goes into this into the Greater Cape Town Water Fund. So really kudos to the fund in terms of the work they're doing and how it aligns with government priorities.
That's great, David. Thank you for sharing your story and your insights on your experience with the fund. So I see we have very interesting questions in the chat, but unfortunately we do not have time to answer all of them. So the questions will remain in the chat of the platform and will be answered later. So thank you very much. Again, for bringing us these great examples of partnership, innovative finance, and mobilization of private sector investments for water security. Now let's move on to the closing remarks. Maria Julia, would you carry on, please?
Thank you very much, Maria Eduarda, and thanks to all the panelists for this wonderful and inspiring conversation. As we know, water security is and will be a major concern for the Americas, and is critical to achieving a sustainable growth. Water scarcity will be also intensified as fast-growing urban areas place heavy pressure on neighboring water resources. And climate change, of course, amplifies this already complex relationship between development and water demand. Today, we heard several examples of innovative finance and mobilization of private sector's investments for water security. Those examples combine innovative public-private partnerships, alliances, models that incentivize the adoption of a more sustainable use of water in agriculture and biodiversity, nature-based solutions, inclusion, governance, new technologies, engagement of local farmers, community, and society in general. But there is a challenge to scale up or replicate those models to guarantee water security for all. There is a need of a more holistic and a more pragmatic approach, and joint actions of investors, funds, public and private sectors, NGOs, local community, and universities or research centers are key. In this sense, we at the IDB are, of course, committed to reinforce the concept of water security in the region. That is to have resources of adequate quality and quantity for all uses and reduce the risk of disasters, taking into consideration the effects of climate change. And now I'm going to switch to Spanish, if that is okay, because quiero tomar unos minutos para agradecerles a todos por haber participado de esta y de todas nuestras sesiones del Foco de las Américas. Hemos desarrollado 7 sesiones y 3 seminarios temáticos en los que nos acompañó una gran audiencia. A los efectos del cambio climático los vemos con claridad y con creciente preocupación. Sequías intensas, olas de calor sin precedentes o inundaciones que causan estragos en distintas partes del planeta. Es por eso que durante estos días hemos hablado de introducir y gestionar infraestructura resiliente, que no solo explote los recursos hídricos, sino también los proteja. Y ello también implica dar un salto de calidad en todo el sector, que permita hacer más y mejor con menos. Para ello es imperativo adoptar una cultura de innovación en todos los niveles, desde la elaboración de políticas, la planificación con visión de resiliencia, tener modelos novedosos de financiamiento e inversión, como los que hemos visto en esta sesión, y de gestión también. En el sector de agua, la experiencia demuestra que se consigue mayor efectividad en la medida que la planificación considere el enfoque de cuenca. Ello implica una combinación de adelantos en gobernanza y ciencia y tecnología para, por ejemplo, el uso de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza, que hemos visto aquí también muy al detalle en esta sesión. Pero también implica reconocer a las cuencas como espacios geográficos donde los grupos y comunidades comparten identidades, tradiciones y cultura, y donde socializan y trabajan en función de la disponibilidad de recursos renovables y no renovables, y donde construir resiliencia es clave para asegurar la sostenibilidad de los recursos frente a riesgos como el cambio climático. Todos estos temas fueron el eje central de las sesiones que desarrollamos. Y los invito a todos a seguir esta conversación a través de nuestras redes sociales y a ver los videos de todas nuestras sesiones y el resumen en nuestro blog Volvamos a la Fuente. De más está decir que todo este esfuerzo no sería posible sin nuestros socios y coorganizadores, algunos de los cuales nos han acompañado desde hace 7 años, cuando desde el BID asumimos la coordinación de este espacio. Les agradecemos mucho todo su esfuerzo y a ustedes, nuestra audiencia, una vez más, muchísimas gracias por habernos acompañado en el Foco en las Américas de la Semana Mundial del Agua. Gracias.